Hey, quick question for you. Can you actually have too much sex? Like, seriously, is that even a thing? I mean, let's be real. We live in a world that loves to hype up sex. Magazines, podcasts, movies, even TikTok, they're all shouting about how sex boosts your mood, improves sleep, reduces stress, strengthens relationships. And yeah, all of that is true. Sex can be amazing for your physical and emotional health. But here's the thing no one really talks about. What happens when you go overboard? Like, what if you're getting it so often that your body, your brain, maybe even your relationship starts waving a little white flag like, what? Chill for a sec. It's kind of a taboo topic, right? Because who wants to admit that something society tells us we should always want more of might actually be causing some problems? Well, today we're going to break the silence. I'm giving you the real talk, no shame, no filters, on 6 surprising things that can happen when sex goes from fun and healthy to just plain too much. So whether you're single, in a relationship, or just curious, stay tuned, because knowing where to draw the line could be the key to protecting not just your physical health, but your emotional well-being too. Ready? Let's dive in. So you've probably heard that sex helps you sleep better, right? And that's totally true to an extent. After a satisfying sexual experience, your body releases a bunch of feel-good chemicals like oxytocin and prolactin. These hormones help you feel relaxed, happy, and yes, sleepy. That's why so many people crash right after. It's nature's version of a warm blanket and a lullaby. But here's what people don't talk about when sex becomes too frequent, like back-to-back sessions with little recovery. It can actually leave you feeling way more tired than energized. Why? Because at the end of the day, sex is still physical activity. You're using your muscles, your cardiovascular system is getting a workout, and your body is burning energy. Depending on how intense or frequent your encounters are, it can actually start to resemble exercise and not just a little stretch. We're talking about full-blown cardio if you're going at it often. Now, imagine doing that kind of exercise without proper rest in between. What happens when you hit the gym hard every single day without a break? You get exhausted, you burn out, your muscles ache, your brain gets foggy, and eventually your body just stops performing at its best. Same rules apply in the bedroom. If you're noticing that you feel groggy, low energy, or even mentally drained after a few days of consistent sexual activity, it's not just in your head. Your body is literally working overtime and using up energy stores that you haven't given it time to replenish. This kind of chronic fatigue doesn't just affect your physical stamina, it can impact your focus, your mood, and even your immune system. And let's not forget, there's also an emotional energy that goes into sex, especially if you're in a relationship. You're giving your attention, your presence, and sometimes your emotional vulnerability to another person. When that's happening constantly without time to recharge, it's like trying to pour from an empty cup. Eventually you hit a wall. A lot of people confuse that post-sex crash with being relaxed or satisfied, but if you're constantly dragging yourself through the day, needing naps, or skipping workouts and plans because you're too wiped out, it could be a sign that your body needs a break. And taking a break doesn't mean something's wrong with you or your relationship. In fact, it shows that you're listening to your body, which is one of the healthiest things you can do, both for yourself and for your partner. So yeah, while sex can help you unwind and sleep better in moderation, too much of it without proper recovery can backfire and leave you more exhausted than refreshed. Balance is everything. Your energy isn't unlimited. Spend it wisely. Let's talk about something most people don't associate with sex at all: your ability to focus. Now, at first glance, it seems totally unrelated. How could something like sex, something that's supposed to make you feel relaxed and satisfied, mess with your concentration? Shouldn't it help you clear your head and improve your mood? Well, yes and no. In moderation, sex can definitely help reduce stress and calm your nervous system, which can help you think more clearly. But when it's happening too frequently, especially without enough rest, hydration, or mental reset in between, it can actually start to mess with your brain's ability to stay sharp. Here's why. First of all, sex floods your brain with chemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. These feel-good neurotransmitters are amazing in small doses. They boost pleasure, bonding, and relaxation. But when you're constantly spiking those chemicals, your brain starts to struggle with balance. You're essentially training your brain to chase that next high, and over time, it becomes harder to focus on things that aren't instantly pleasurable. That project you need to finish, that deadline you've been pushing off, that conversation you were supposed to have with your boss. Suddenly, all of it feels extra hard to focus on. You're mentally scattered, craving stimulation, and not really able to sit down and just get stuff done. And it's not just about brain chemistry, there's also the energy factor. Every time you have sex, especially if it's intense or happens multiple times a day, your body expends physical and emotional energy. That energy doesn't just magically refill itself the second you're done. So when you're putting all that effort into sexual activity, there's often less left in the tank for mental tasks, especially ones that require focus, strategy, or creativity. You might also notice that your motivation dips. It's a weird side effect, but when your body is in constant recovery mode from frequent sex, your drive to pursue challenging goals, especially ones that aren't immediately rewarding, can take a hit. It's almost like your brain starts saying, why work hard when I can just feel good instead? And here's the kicker, you may not even realize it's happening. You just think you're tired or off, or maybe you blame your lack of focus on poor sleep or stress. But if you take a step back and look at your overall habits, it might turn out that your overactive sex life is silently hijacking your mental clarity. This isn't about blaming sex or saying it's bad, not at all. It's just about understanding how too much of a good thing can start to affect other areas of your life. So if you're finding it hard to concentrate lately and you're wondering why your productivity is slipping, it might be worth asking, am I giving my brain enough time to reset between all the pleasure? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your focus is take a little break. All right, now let's get into something that's not exactly glamorous to talk about, but absolutely needs to be said. When sex becomes too frequent, and especially when it's happening without proper care, your body can start to show some very real signs of wear and tear. And yes, we're talking about down there. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, or anywhere in between. Your genitals are made of sensitive skin and tissue. They're not designed to go through constant friction, pressure, or stretching without time to recover. Just like any other part of your body, if you overuse it, you can start to experience irritation, inflammation, and discomfort. And when it comes to sex, it can creep up faster than you think. Let's start with the obvious friction. When you're having sex frequently, especially without enough natural lubrication or lube, friction becomes a real issue. The skin can become raw red or even slightly swollen. You might not notice it during the moment, but afterwards, that burning, stinging, or itching sensation, that's your body telling you it's not happy. For people with vaginas, this can lead to something as mild as surface level soreness or something more serious like tiny micro tears in the vaginal walls, especially if you're not fully aroused or lubricated. And for people with penises, the skin can become chafed or irritated, especially around the foreskin or shaft. When that happens repeatedly, it creates the perfect environment for bacteria to get in and cause infections. Speaking of infections, that's another huge concern. When you're sexually active all the time, your natural balance of bacteria down there can get thrown off. This is especially true if you're not washing properly, not using condoms with new partners, or not peeing after sex. All of these things help prevent bacteria from entering the urethra, but when sex is happening constantly without proper hygiene in between, the risk of things like UTIs, yeast infections, or bacterial vaginosis goes way up. And here's the part that people don't talk about. You might not even realize the irritation is from sex at first. You might think it's an allergy, soap, or even an STI. But often it's just a case of doing too much too often without giving your body a break to heal and reset. Another overlooked issue is swelling or lingering discomfort after sex, especially if you're using toys or trying new positions that your body's not used to. Again, this isn't about shame. Exploration is great, but repetition without recovery, that's where problems start. There's also the emotional toll that can come with it. When your body starts to associate sex with pain or discomfort, even subconsciously, it can mess with your desire. You might find yourself less turned on, less responsive, or mentally distracted because your brain is now associating pleasure with potential pain. That's not a place anyone wants to be in, and it's totally preventable with a little awareness. The key here is paying attention. Your body has ways of telling you when it's been pushed too far. Irritation, soreness, discomfort, burning, weird smells, unusual discharge. These are all signs that something needs to slow down. There's absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying an active sex life. But when your body starts showing signs that it's overwhelmed, that's your signal to dial it back. Hydrate, use proper lube, prioritize hygiene, and most importantly, rest. Because let's be real, sex should feel good during and after. If it's leaving you walking funny, reaching for ice packs, or Googling why does it burn down there, it might be time to take a breather and let your body catch up. Let's talk about something a little deeper, the emotional side of sex. Because while sex is often thought of as a purely physical act, we all know there's a strong emotional layer to it too, especially when it happens in the context of a relationship. But here's where things can get a little tricky when you're having sex too often. The emotional connection that usually comes with it can actually start to blur or even fade. Now, don't get me wrong, sex can absolutely bring two people closer together. It builds intimacy, strengthens trust, and makes you feel bonded in a way that words sometimes can't. But when sex becomes the main way you and your partner connect, it can start to cover up the deeper emotional needs that aren't being addressed. Here's an example. Maybe you and your partner are going through a rough patch. Communication's been a little off. There's tension about work, money, or whatever life's throwing at you. Instead of talking it out, you keep turning to sex as a way to reconnect. And for a while it works, it's a quick fix. But slowly, you start realizing that once the physical moment ends, that feeling of closeness, it fades too. And those problems you avoided, still there. It's easy to confuse physical intimacy with emotional intimacy, especially when you're having sex often. It can feel like, well, we're still close, we're still hooking up all the time. But emotional closeness isn't measured by how often you touch each other. It's measured by how safe, seen, and supported you feel when the clothes are on. And over time, if there's too much focus on sex and not enough on talking, listening, and sharing, you might start to feel disconnected without even knowing why. You're physically close, but emotionally something's missing. That's when the connection starts to feel blurry. Another thing that can happen is that sex becomes more of a routine or even an expectation rather than a meaningful experience. You might start doing it out of habit or because you think you should, not because you really want it in that moment. When that happens, it stops feeling like an act of love or desire and starts feeling like a box you're checking. That kind of pattern can actually lead to emotional resentment or burnout, especially if one person feels less into it than the other but keeps going along with it to maintain the connection. Let's also not forget emotional vulnerability. One of the most powerful parts of a strong relationship is being able to share your thoughts, your fears, your goals, the stuff that really matters. If sex is constantly being used as a substitute for those conversations, you miss the chance to build real emotional intimacy. You're bonding, but only on the surface. Now, none of this means you need to stop having sex or that frequent sex is bad. It's not, but it's about balance. Emotional closeness comes from more than physical touch. It comes from eye contact during a tough conversation, supporting each other through hard days, laughing together, and feeling like you're on the same team, even when things aren't perfect. So if you ever start to feel like something's off emotionally, even though you and your partner are still physically active, that's your cue to check in. Ask each other, are we really connecting or are we just hooking up and calling it closeness? Sometimes the most intimate thing you can do for your relationship isn't sex, it's slowing down, sitting face to face and really listening. That's what keeps the emotional connection clear, strong and real. All right, let's get into something a little less sexy, but super important.
Infections.
Yep, we're going there because when you're having sex more often, especially if it's daily or multiple times a day, your risk of developing certain infections can quietly creep up. And no, this isn't just about STIs. We're talking about a whole range of things your body might not be too thrilled about if you're not giving it the proper care and recovery time it needs. Here's the reality: the genital area is delicate, warm, and full of natural bacteria, both good and bad. That ecosystem works pretty well on its own. But when sex happens too often, especially without enough attention to hygiene protection, that balance can easily get thrown off. And once that balance is disturbed, infections start to show up more frequently. Let's start with one of the most common ones, urinary tract infections or UTIs. These are super common in people with vaginas, especially after frequent sex. During intercourse, bacteria from the skin or anus can be pushed into the urethra, the tiny tube that carries urine out of the body. Once bacteria make their way in, boom, you've got a UTI. And if you're having sex often without urinating afterward or cleaning up properly, your risk goes way up. The symptoms: burning, constant need to pee, lower belly pain, not exactly a fun trade-off. Then there are yeast infections. These happen when the natural yeast in the vagina grows out of control, usually because the healthy bacteria that normally keep it in check have been disrupted. Sex, especially frequent sex, can mess with that balance, particularly if there's friction, use of certain lubricants or semen, which can affect pH levels. Add in things like tight underwear, not changing out of sweaty clothes, or poor hygiene, and it becomes a perfect storm. Men aren't off the hook either. People with penises can develop things like balanitis, an inflammation of the head of the penis, especially common if you're uncircumcised and not cleaning properly. Frequent friction and trapped moisture make this more likely. And yes, guys can also get UTIs, though it's less common. And then, of course, we've got sexually transmitted infections, STIs. Even in monogamous relationships, or when you think your partner has been tested, the more often you're sexually active without using protection, the higher the chance of transmission, especially if either of you has had past partners. It's easy to think, I'm good, I trust them, but frequency increases exposure. That's just basic math and biology. Another issue people often overlook is skin infections or irritation-based breakouts. When you're having a lot of skin-to-skin contact, especially in hot or sweaty conditions, it opens the door for things like fungal infections, ingrown hairs, or even bacterial skin infections to develop in the groin area. And once again, these are more likely when sex is frequent and hygiene habits aren't consistent. Now, none of this is meant to scare you away from having sex. That's not the point. Sex can absolutely be part of a healthy lifestyle, but it's about understanding that your body has limits. And when you don't respect those limits, it's going to let you know in uncomfortable ways. So if you're having sex often, make sure you're doing the basics. Stay clean. Use protection when needed, stay hydrated, urinate after sex, and give your body time to rest between sessions. If something starts to feel off, itching, burning, unusual discharge, or pain, don't wait it out. Get it checked. The sooner you treat it, the easier it is to fix. Bottom line, taking care of your sexual health isn't just about pleasure. It's about protecting your body so that sex stays fun, safe, and drama-free. Let's talk about something you probably wouldn't expect from an active sex life: losing interest in it altogether. It sounds backwards, right? Like, how could more sex possibly lead to less desire? But it happens more often than people think. At first, everything feels exciting. You and your partner are all over each other. It's new, passionate, spontaneous. You can't get enough. And that's completely normal, especially in the beginning stages of a relationship or during a hot streak. But when sex starts happening constantly without much emotion build-up or variety, your brain can actually begin to tune it out. The spark starts to fade, not because anything's wrong, but because you're overstimulated. Here's the science behind it. Sex triggers a release of dopamine, the same brain chemical that gives you that rush of pleasure and motivation. But the more often you flood your system with dopamine, the more your brain starts to adjust. It becomes less sensitive to those same levels, and over time, the thrill just doesn't hit as hard. It's like listening to your favorite song 20 times in a row. Eventually, it becomes background noise. And when sex becomes a routine instead of something you look forward to, your desire can start to dip. You may still love your partner, you may still find them attractive, but you're just not in the mood. And that can be confusing, even frustrating. You might start wondering, what's wrong with me? Am I broken? But in reality, it could just be that your body and mind are asking for a break. There's also a psychological element to this. When sex becomes expected, like a daily habit or something you do just to keep the peace or avoid disappointing someone, it can start to feel like an obligation instead of a choice. And once something feels like a chore, your natural desire for it tends to shrink. After all, true desire thrives on space, anticipation, and emotional connection, not pressure or routine. This doesn't mean sex shouldn't be frequent or that enjoying it often is bad. What it means is that too much without balance, variety, or real intimacy can actually numb your interest. Sometimes stepping back, focusing on non-sexual forms of connection, or simply giving your body time to reset can help bring that spark back. So if you're finding that sex has gone from exciting to just meh, it's okay, you're not broken, you're just human. And a little space might be exactly what your desire needs to wake back up. All right, let's be clear, this isn't about shaming anyone. Sex is healthy, sex is fun. Sex is a beautiful part of human connection. But like anything in life, balance is key. Listen to your body, protect your energy, and remember, quality beats quantity every time. So tell me in the comments, have you ever felt too much of a good thing? Or are you thinking, nah, keep it coming?